I'll leave that on. All right, real life. So this is going to be short. I always say that. It's going to be short. I have other things to be working on. I was uh, I went with my wife to her dental appointment, and while I was riding back on my bicycle, I was listening to a short story um, from this channel that analyzes writing for writers and uses sometimes examples. It was a short story by Ray Bradbury, who is quite. He was very industrious, and he wrote a lot of really interesting stories, and they were always I would say, very thoughtful. Ray Bradbury, and there was a lot of science fiction writers who were very thoughtful back at the time. And Isaac Asimov gave us the three laws of robotics, and uh, Frank Herbert wrote a lot of stuff with deep spirituality and analyzing what is true and what is not, and perceptions. And so, not that current authors don't do that, but um, back when I was young and I was reading a lot of science fiction, I read a lot of Ray Bradbury, and so he wrote this short story. It really was quite short, and Tale Foundry used it as an example of how to wrap up a story. And the long and the short of the story was humans ended up on Mars, and of course, it's all speculative fiction, right? There's probably never ever going to be humans on Mars, but anyway, humans went to Mars, and after they arrived on Mars, there was nuclear war on Earth, and they became kind of abandoned. And actually, Mars sort of took them through some process that is not revealed. Uh, they came to resemble the ancient Martians who were there, who built the cities and dug the canals and created the villas and all these things. And so the humans eventually step into the role of the extinct ancient Martians and become Martians. Um, and that's not just, like The Martian, where that guy gets abandoned and he has to basically make that his home. Their skin color changes, their eye color changes. They give themselves new names, and the humans essentially vanish. And what Tale Foundry was using this as an example of is that if you're writing a story that contains elements of change or that contains themes that could be melancholy, right? That you're going to change to the point where you won't even recognize yourself. That maybe that's a horror story, right? Maybe that's a terrible thing that now you can't even recognize yourself in the mirror. Or that other person that you used to be is now the alien, right? And you're something different. And looking back, that person was the alien. But it doesn't have to be a horror story. You could play it that way, but it doesn't have to be. For example, in a person's life, as they grow up, we all look back sometimes, not frequently, but occasionally. We look back and remember what we were like as a child, or what we believed as a teenager, and the angst and the anxiety we suffered entering adulthood, and the mistakes we made, and the people whose feelings we hurt, and how we might like to undo all that. Of course, now I'm projecting, right? Because, I'm turning 65 soon. And so as you get on in life, you start thinking back over things. Not that I'm admitting to any mistakes. I'm just saying that is a process that people go through. And I did make mistakes. So Tale Foundry was saying, look, this reads like, cosmic horror, where these bodies are being taken over and warped into something unrecognizable. But on the other hand, the main character in the story just stops fighting. He stops being anxious about it. He just stops, wringing his hands about what's happening to him and his family on Mars. And eventually, they just kind of roll with it and they evolve. Now, in a person's life, it generally doesn't happen that your eye color changes and your skin color changes and you view yourself in the mirror is perfect, and that other person who you vaguely remember, that's the alien. That doesn't really happen to individuals, but like I said, that their transition from childhood to adulthood kind of has that going on. Now, there's another book, and I can't remember who wrote it. Was it Heinlein or maybe even Bradbury. Um, it was called, I just remember the title, Childhood's End. And it's kind of the same thing. Where humanity has to grow up quickly and become something else. And that could be a horror story, right? It doesn't have to be. It could be childhood's end. There's no horror story in the end of childhood. Maybe it feels that way a little bit at the time. You don't know what to do, don't know what to think. You're making mistakes. You're anxious. You do stupid things, cringe. And then you enter adulthood and you're like, yeah, everybody goes through that. It's no big deal. It's childhood's end. Childhood's end. So I just wanted to jump on here and just kind of address that a little bit. So I say a lot of things on here as a scientist, as a climate scientist, as a biologist, as an engineer, as a person who thinks very clearly, very rationally, doesn't allow anything to go by me that's irrational. That's who I am. I think, right? And some people sometimes tell me that I am very clear in my thought processes. Back in the days when I used to interact with a lot of people. And even though I say that, and it could be alarming, right? I could be a doomer and the sky is falling and all that. I just want to reveal that it sort of doesn't bother me. You see, it sort of doesn't bother me because I know we must change. Just like an awkward, tweener, I know we have to change. We have to grow up. We've been doing some things that are like teenage behavior. We've been kicking and screaming, throwing tantrums, and First World War, Second World War, Cold War, nuclear weapons. I mean, this is all on a trajectory that is itself exceedingly grim. Just as a teenager can be on a trajectory of self-destruction, of lashing out and throwing people away and throwing their life away and burning bridges. A teenager on that trajectory, your hope is that they will come to terms, that they will find a peaceful place, and that teenager will become a focused, centered, and self-actualized adult. Not just because you want them to stop being a pain in the ass, as humanity right now is being a pain in the ass with regards to global heating and global war and the Third World War and nuclear weapons in Europe and inequity and injustices everywhere all over the planet. Yeah, humanity is acting like a tempestuous teenager. So we want our tempestuous teenager to find a centered place, come to be at peace, okay? And not just so that they're not an asshole and giving us grief all the time, as humanity is really giving itself grief all the time right now, but also for their own benefit. You want that person, or in this case, this species, to be okay. Just, are you okay? Hey, you look different today. You look relaxed. You look like you're okay. Did we turn a corner here? Because if we turned a corner, I'm really happy for you. I'm very happy for you. Wow, I like this version of you, and not just for me, but because I can endure a teenager. I was a teenager once, and I'm patient. I can be around you and not murderize you, but for your own sake, you should pursue this. Whatever's working for you today, you should just cling to this, because this is how I see you. I see you being relaxed. I see you being at peace with yourself. I see you exploring new futures. I see you not clinging to the past and throwing tantrums. I see you moving forward from this place where you are right now, where you're just calmly, contemplating your existence. And from that space, you can go forward. Just accept you yourself as you are. And I think from here, you can go forward. And, maybe it's going to be hard, but maybe it'll be lovely. Maybe it'll be a miracle, from a place of calm acceptance. And this is my situation. And, I have some challenges, but I can deal with my situation from here calmly. I will mobilize my inner strength. I will mobilize my assets. I will mobilize my intelligence and my emotional intelligence. And from here together, everything locked together, ready to roll, I will go forward. And that we would hope that for a 16-year-old, right? Or a 22-year-old, or whenever it is that they come down to, having to make a choice on how they're going to proceed. because, at some point you're talking about the rest of your entire life. And the reason why I'm saying all this about some fictional teenager or, the humans who end up on Mars and are gradually changed into something else is I think that one of the keys to humans, our species, dealing with the mess we've made of the earth and are continuing to make of the earth, and it's going to get worse. And I'm not sure there's any way to not have it get worse at this point. We may no longer be in control. Not that that's the word I would actually use. Um, if there's a better word, I'm not sure what it is, but we were never in control. This was never ours to control. We didn't even know how this worked. We're like a toddler, randomly hitting a grandfather clock with a hammer or playing around with it. Not that we were ever in control, but from here, where we are right now, we could simply say, all right, it's time to go forward. It's time to go forward. It's time to recognize both our limitations and our strengths. And from here, go forward. Now, I like to use the example a lot of the Titanic, the RMS Titanic, because I think it represents a suitable metaphor. The Titanic, for those people, that was their entire home, right? That was it while they were transiting the Atlantic Ocean. That was their home. And it hit an iceberg. And of course, no one really wanted that. No one steered into the iceberg. Hey, this will be fun. Crash. Okay. But that happened, right? That's a thing that just happened. So now they have to cope with it, right? So it's the end of your world. And now it's time to get off the Titanic. Or if you rather, it's time to make personal changes. It's time to grow up. It's time to become an adult. There is an element of that happening with us with regards to global heating and climate change. We are not having adult conversations. We should be. We should not be having emotional breakdowns. This is a hoax, and you're doing this for personal, monetization, and you're selling doom, and you're trying to convince us to change when we don't need to change. This is just you forcing your change down our throats, and and that's all having a tantrum, right? Not wanting, as far as I'm concerned, really not wanting to be responsible adults and have their adult conversation, because we need to have an adult conversation like adults, not like tempestuous 16-year-olds throw a fit, throw a rock through the window and try to intimidate everybody into just letting them do whatever they want, like everyone's Donald Trump. Why don't we just have an adult conversation? Just sit down, and take assessment of our situation and talk like adults and be rational and very clear and unemotional as possible. Yes, it's a terrible thing, and the Titanic is sinking, and the global civilization is probably on the rocks, and we're losing human habitat. We don't know how many humans can even survive this. It's like we're on Mars and we're turning into Martians. Who knows what's on the other side of this? But on the other hand, you kind of have to accept that now. You kind of do. You kind of have to accept that big changes are in the offing, around the next corner, and the next corner could be next week, temporarily in time. The next corner could be a week from now that we turn this other corner and we run right up against the iceberg, or the reality that we've already hit the iceberg and now we have to make changes. And that means adjusting your expectations and carving out a new set of expectations and using your intelligence and using your emotional intelligence and gathering people around you and being part of other spheres that other people are putting together and working together. And we can do this. We can do this. But we need to be adults about it, right? We need to be adults about it. Change is not bad. We all change. We all grow up. We were little kids, and then we became awkward, middle schoolers, and then we became difficult and confused teenagers, and then we were young adults, new adults, finally legally able to have sex and drink, and then we do those things wrong until we figure out that, yep, with certain freedoms comes certain responsibilities. Okay, check those boxes, figure that part out, and then we just settle down, right? We accept the changes. We grow into the changes, and then we become whatever it is we're supposed to be. Really, what we were born to be, we become. What we were born to be, we become. So I've been writing a short story. I've been writing it for a long time, actually. It started as a series of blogspot, yeah, blogspot po- uh, posts, and it's about this guy that who is nameless in the story. I'm not going to spoil out why he meets death, and he meets death, and death is not bad. She's good looking, she's sweet. She's a little quirky, has kind of a morbid sense of humor. But, as death goes, she's not bad. Uh, and they start dating, and he's always worried that she's going to kill him because she is death. But yeah, that's the story. That's the setup. That's the tension between these two. Um, and so I've had a chance to write about death. What is she like? And she's pretty cool. I mean, you'd like her if you met her. You might be a little off put by her humor, and but other than that, she's okay to be around. And so as I've been writing for her, like for about 10 years now, in those blog posts, and then more recently I've collected all that information, and I'm writing, I'm recomposing it into a novel. So I'm not even changing the original posts. I'm just dropping them into the plot and then building around them. Because originally the posts were just for my own personal self-edification. I thought she was funny. I thought he was funny. I thought they had a lot of fun together, and I just enjoyed writing the posts. And I didn't really go anywhere with it, but now I'm trying to do something with it. So I have this kind of relationship with death as a character in my book, and she's scary without really being scary. In that regard, she's sort of our future, right? Because we're all going to die, and that's sort of scary, but it's not really scary. It's just what happens when you go through all the changes, and you're a tiny child, and you're skinning your knee and getting bee stings, and you just get older and older, and then you have all the pleasures of an adulthood, and you have children of your own, and you have your career that you enjoy, and you have the people you're with that you enjoy, and as you get older, then eventually you have to prepare yourself for death. And it's been fun to write for her. It's just kind of a therapy for all of us to have thoughts about how we leave this world. And I think, though, that as I'm doing that, and as I was listening to this short story by Ray Bradbury, as told by Tale Foundry, I was like, well, we all kind of need to face that we're changing. At the end of the changes, there might be extinction. It's possible, but certainly on the way to extinction, if that's our future, uh, you know, or even a future for many of the animals on Earth, which we're going to have to watch, right? We're going to have to sit back and watch this happen to them, even if it doesn't happen to us. We're going to have to watch it happen to them, and that's going to be really painful for everybody. That's going to be very painful to watch. But we have an opportunity here to grow up and mature and think differently about our future and stop being so difficult and opinionated and narcissistic and all the things that we associate with difficult, pre-adult humans. Because we are like pre-adult. Our species is like a pre-adult species. There's a lot of baggage we're bringing forward from our childhood. We did a lot of amazing things in our early history, with fire and the wheel and civilization and domesticating crops and domesticating animals and domesticating each other. We did a lot of amazing things that we should be proud of. And the things we did in the last 100 or 200 years are also really interesting, and we should be proud of what we've accomplished. It'd be nice to take those accomplishments forward, along with all the changes we have to make to be compatible with civilization. Some future civilization needs to be based on adult conversation, not based on making money and exploiting this and enslaving these people and eating all of that and eating all of this and eating all of everything. We need to have an adult conversation about our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the world. And I think from that, some really nice changes might come. We might just settle down like we would hope a 16-year-old would kind of settle down. Looking forward to it. You're going to be a great person when you settle down, when you get over your anxieties and your, abreacting to everything and conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff. You just relax, grow up a little bit. It takes time. We're going to be patient. But for us as humans, now is the time. Now is the time. It's time for us to grow up. I want to say that. It's time for us to grow up. Our childhood is over. And it was a very productive childhood. And there's nothing about that we, there's a lot about that we should be ashamed of. The way we treated each other primarily, and the way we treated animals and the habitat of the earth and the damage we caused. It was a shameful episode. And I think shame has a purpose here. It's not pointing out the shameful things we did to each other and to the world is not intended to make us feel bad. It's intended to say, okay, that's a pin in the map of a place you don't want to go. That's a behavior that you don't want to bring forward. Okay? You need to go forward into a different relationship with yourself, with other people, with communities, and with the earth as a whole, and with all the other species, our fellow astronauts, okay, traveling through space together. Let's put a pin in the things not to do. Let's just recognize them as shameful, recognize them as being things that maybe we didn't understand at the time, but we're looking back now with an adult attitude, and we're saying, okay, you know what? That is cringe. I made sense at the time. I'm going to put a pin in that and say, I'm not going to go there again. We can have that conversation now. We can start dealing with global heating. We can start dealing with climate change. We can start dealing with all the injustice in the world. We can start dealing with our shitty attitude about the world around us. And it's just there to be exploited. It's just there to just dig here and dig there and throw everything into a waste heap and cut down all the trees and till up all the native vegetation and pave it and cement it. And we just stop doing that. We could just stop doing that. And then here's a thought. We undo some of that. How about that? We start undoing that. No, I'm not saying that as some sort of a dirty hippie living in a teepee smoking pot. I'm saying that, and I don't do any of those things, by the way. That's my own image of that kind of person. So I'm not saying that as a dirty hippie. I'm saying that as a scientist and an engineer. Well, we've kind of screwed the pooch here. We really kind of have to fix some things. In addition to, we stop breaking things all the time. We stop throwing furniture inside the house, and then we start straightening things up. And while we're at it, we should apologize. And while we're at it, we should promise not to do that again. And while we're at that, we should reflect on, the shameful, cringe things we've done and try to be better and stop doing those things and go forward as adults. I think that's what we do. And, I talk on here and it sounds like I'm a doomer. And I say that, this many people are going to die and this many animals are going to go extinct. And, the economy is going to collapse. And it sounds like a doomerism, but it's not. It's not doomerism. It's reality. It's reality. We're going to have to give up fossil fuels. And when we do, everything we know, everything we eat, everything we breathe, really, and everything we wear, and our home and our shelter and everything, and the food at the store and the car and the driveway and the fuel in the car and the cars and the street lights and the asphalt and the concrete and government and global trade and supply chains and just-in-time economy and all of that will simply collapse without fossil fuels. And yet the fossil fuels must go away as more people are beginning to discover, and they're having to cope with that, and they're not doing all that well. And there's going to be a tendency to say, oh, well, it's the end of the world. Yeah, but if you were 16 years old, the end of your world is actually the beginning of another one. It could be really nice, right? Village life, know everybody, you work in the fields, you have your hobbies, and, you're each looking after each other, and it's a slower life, it's a simpler life. But yeah, that's adulthood. That's what adulthood looks like, right? You can't stay up until 2:00 every morning. You can't take every kind of drug. You can't, hurt people's feelings and walk away from it laughing. When you're an adult, you stop doing those things. or you go to jail, right? I mean, you continue to be irresponsible and difficult and irascible and unapproachable, and yeah, eventually you really screw up and you end up in prison. So what would that be for humans? I don't know. I don't know what that would look like for us to end up in prison. I guess it's a 99.9% die off. So not just prison, it's really a death sentence for a lot of people. A death sentence. Or we can stop being that way and just clean up our act and be different and go forward that way like adults. So I don't know why I thought of this, but I looked this up. This is a Blue Oyster Cult. I'm not sure if they're still a band, but they were like a big deal early in my life. I really enjoyed their music, and this was one of my favorite songs. And it sounds grim, but it's not, and it's worth looking up and listening to if you want to. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Blue Oyster Cult, BOC, and it's titled either The Reaper or Don't Fear the Reaper, but it's not really about the Reaper. It's about change, and I like it. Um, I'm going to read the first paragraph from it, and then I encourage you to go look it up. Blue Oyster Cult, the Reaper. Here's just the first stanza of the lyrics, and think about this in terms of, you know, our responsibilities to each other and to ourselves and to the world as we grapple with climate change and the changes that we're going to have to go through, and the challenges that's going to represent, and the fear and the doomerism and the catastrophism, and just kind of just settling down and just facing it, right? All our times have come here, but now they're gone. Seasons don't fear the reaper, nor do the wind, the sun, or the rain. We can be like they are. And I think that's a good message. Um, the reaper in this case is it's just unavoidable change, really, that you're going to have to move on. And of course, at the end of a person's life, they move on at the end of their life into whatever you think comes after life. Take your pick. It's something, right? Even if it's nothing, that's still something. Nothing is still something. And, we have a responsibility to be adults about whatever comes later in our individual lives, but also in our shared life, our civilization. We have to be adults about what comes after. And seasons don't fear the reaper. They just don't. That's enough for today. I got some things to do.